June 25th, 1876, as the nation prepared its centennial celebrations, Lieutenant Colonel George A. Custer's 7th Cavalry suffered shocking defeat on this battlefield. Sitting Bull's allied Lakota Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors, reacting to the cavalry's surprise attack, killed every man in Custer's immediate command. Stark white headstones mark where they fell. How could this have happened? After the Civil War, a flood of settlers, soldiers, miners, and railroad builders overran the lands of nomadic Plains Indians. Constant tensions produced raids, reprisals, and treaty violations by both sides. The proud buffalo hunters resisted reservation life. Then came the gold rush invasion of the Black Hills, hallowed grounds in the Great Sioux Reservation. War parties attacked the stampeding miners. The army got orders to force all Indians onto reservations. Thus began the Sioux War of 1876. Pursued by soldiers, the Lakota tribes, plus Cheyennes and Arapahoes, joined Sitting Bull, old man chief of the Unkpapa Lakota. Oglala war leader Crazy Horse stood with him. In their thousands, the hosts gathered on Rosebud Creek near Deer Medicine Rock. Here, Sitting Bull had a Sundance vision of horse soldiers falling upside down, dead into an Indian camp. The vision united the fighting men of the great village. The army sent 3 columns to close on Sitting Bull's village. 1 from the south, 2 working together from the north. But vast distances prevented coordinated attacks. General George Crook with 1,300 men got within striking range first, but was struck himself on the upper Rosebud in a surprise attack by Sitting Bull's warriors. A swirling, ferocious battle ended in Crook's retreat to Wyoming. 5 days later, General Alfred Terry sent his columns south from the Yellowstone River towards Sitting Bull's village. Lieutenant Colonel George Custer and the 7th Cavalry would sweep up Rosebud Creek to a point south of the great village. Terry would follow with Colonel John Gibbons's slower column up the Bighorn River. Pinned by these blocking forces, the Indians would have to stand and fight. Unaware of Crook's repulse by the aggressive warriors, the officers feared one thing only: discovery by enemy scouts, then scattering flight of the tribes. Custer's more than 600 troopers, plus scouts and packers, arrived at Sitting Bull's Sundance site on June 24th. They found debris of a huge village and a mile-wide trail heading over the divide to the Little Bighorn. Custer's Crow and Arikara scouts sensed powerful medicine and enemy warriors beyond counting. Early June 25th, from a high point called the Crow's Nest, Custer's scouts saw signs of the distant village. A huge pony herd and campfire smoke. Warriors watching from near ridges convinced Custer that he had been discovered. Fear of the villagers' escape dictated immediate attack. Despite his scouts' cautions, Custer and the 7th Cavalry crossed the divide and descended into the Little Bighorn Valley. Custer led a mixed lot. Many men lacked combat experience and training. Some immigrant recruits hardly spoke English. Their single-shot carbines limited firepower. Men and mounts had marched for weeks, the last days with little sleep and water. Their 15-mile descent into the valley would take them to a big, rugged arena occupied by a host of people who knew the country. The 2,000 or so warriors had practiced war since childhood. About 200 of them carried repeating rifles. They would fight for their free life and their women and children. Custer's march down Reno Creek under a hot sun combined scouting with attack. Crows and Arikaras leading. Captain Frederick Benteen with 3 companies ordered to probe southwest. Custer with 5 companies and Major Marcus Reno with 3, the pack train trailing, raised plumes of dust as they approached the river. This telltale dust raised the alarm in a village unwarned that rested in peace by the cool river. Came cries of, "Many soldiers, chargers coming, warriors to horse, women and children fleeing with old men covering them." Now Custer saw rising dust as the village, still hidden by bluffs, exploded into action. Reports of Indians fleeing galvanized him to a quick plan of attack. Reno ordered to ford the Little Bighorn and charge from the south, bringing the warriors to battle. Custer and his larger battalion veering right along the bluffs to charge from the north. Lieutenant Charles Varnum, Chief of Scouts, described the scene as Reno charged the village. The valley was full of Indians riding in every direction. The Indians retiring before us for about a mile. Suddenly, the Indians began advancing towards us, and looking back, I saw that the troops were dismounting to fight on foot. Reno's extended skirmish line mustered only 140 men, and a quarter of them held horses behind the firing line. Mounted warriors swept around the soldiers' left flank, then drove them into the woods lining the river. Other warriors on foot crept through the woods, and the fight shifted to close quarters in the thick underbrush. The noisy, deadly melee bred confusion. Reno, in shock, issued conflicting orders. Mount! Dismount! The charge and retreat now changed to rout, as the disorganized battalion broke for the river. "Like buffalo fleeing," said Cheyenne Chief Two Moons. Those who survived the gauntlet of pursuing warriors and battled across the river scrambled to the top of the bluffs to form a rough defensive perimeter. Shortly, Captain Benteen and his battalion, back from their scout, joined Reno's shattered remnants. To Benteen's question, "Where is Custer?" the stricken Reno replied, "For God's sake, Benteen, halt your command and help me. I've lost half my men." Custer rode north along the line of bluffs overlooking the river valley. From a high ridge he saw Reno charging, and for the first time he saw the village, its warriors massing for defense, its tribal circle stretching for 2 miles down the valley. Farther along, Custer ascended the peak of the bluffs. Here he saw the field of the coming battle. Medicine Tail Coulee below, and beyond, a rugged landscape descending from high ground on the right, laced by more coulees and ravines cutting down to the river. Next, Custer dispatched trumpeter Giovanni Martini with an urgent message. "Benteen, come on, big village, be quick, bring packs. P.S. Bring packs." Lakotas and Cheyennes, heading for the Reno fight, spotted the cavalry on the bluffs. They turned back to meet the new threat. The alarm spread. The main body of warriors left the fading Reno and raced north. A few more than 200 soldiers would face the full fury of 2,000 warriors. By this time, scouts had told Custer of Reno's retreat. His last hope for support was Benteen. What followed, as Indian memories and mute evidence of the battlefield suggest, hinged on that hope. In Medicine Tail Coulee, Custer divided his force again. Captain Miles Keogh's 3 companies would hold on the high ground as a rallying point for Benteen. Captain George Yates' 2 companies would drop down Medicine Tail Coulee to the river to test and hold the ford. Yates' position at the river soon came under pressure. He began a controlled withdrawal under fire up the west bench of Deep Coulee. More warriors rushed through the village and crossed the river at several points. Some massed behind Greasy Grass Ridge. Others surged up Deep Ravine in Medicine Tail Coulee. Keogh's battalion on the high ground also came under fire. Like Yates, Keogh moved and fought toward the goal of both battalions, Calhoun Hill at the south end of Battle Ridge. Once there, the captains positioned skirmishers to hold off the growing number of warriors surrounding them. Now Custer's battle began a quick slide as time and distance worked against him. His fight sped toward climax, but Benteen was still stuck with Reno's paralyzed battalion 4 miles back. At some point, Custer with Yates' battalion extended his force northward on Battle Ridge to command its high point, Last Stand Hill, and to counter Indian forces closing in from west, north, and east. Roles changed as Lakotas and Cheyennes shifted from defense to attack. The fight downslope from Calhoun Hill shows their tactics. Using natural cover, they crept ever closer to the soldiers, popping a shot, then dropping back to cover. The troopers charged to drive them back. Cheyenne warrior Wooden Leg recalled about 40 of the soldiers came galloping from the ridge toward where most of the Cheyennes and many of the Oglala were hidden. The Indians ran back into a deep gulch. The soldiers stopped and got off their horses. Lame White Man, a Cheyenne chief, got off his horse and called us to come back and fight. In a few minutes, the warriors were all around these soldiers. Then, Lame White Man called out, "Come, we can kill all of them." As soldier ranks thinned, a frontal assault on Calhoun Hill broke the skirmish lines. Chief Gall told how warriors stampeded the cavalry horses by shooting the horse holders. And then by waving blankets and shouting, we scared the horses down that coulee. Oglala war leader Crazy Horse and Mini Kanju White Bull now led pony charges across Battle Ridge. These tests of valor broke the extended lines of defense in two. Custer with Yates to the north, Keogh and his battalion trying to hold the south and east. Disintegration soon followed. Disorganized survivors fled northward trying to rejoin Custer. Most of them fell to the sounds of closing hoofbeats and the piercing cries of pursuers. That left only Custer's final command, less than 100 men. Their maneuvers north and west are a mystery, but it is certain that they faced overwhelming odds that forced all survivors up the slope of Last Stand Hill. Wooden Leg remembered. All of the soldiers were gone except for a band of them at the end of the ridge. They had hidden behind dead horses. Hundreds or thousands of warriors were all around them, creeping closer all the time. Suddenly, a breakout. The Cheyenne, Tall Bull, heard a big war whoop that soldiers were coming. Soldiers came on foot and ran right through us into deep ravine. Fears nothing added. The Indians followed them and killed them with war clubs. Then back to Last Stand Hill. Gall said the soldiers were fighting good. The men were loading and firing, but they could not hit the warriors in the gully and in the ravine. Wooden Leg described the end. The shots quit coming from the soldiers. All the boys and old men on horses came tearing into the crowd. The air was full of dust and smoke. It looked like thousands of dogs might look if all of them were mixed together in a fight. Early June 27th, the Terry Gibbon column approached the battlefield. Scouts counted nearly 200 7th Cavalry bodies scattered there. Officers from the Reno Benteen defense site galloped up. "Where's Custer?" they asked. They could not believe the reply. All dead. Then spilled out their own story. Their attempt to follow Custer's trail, but being driven back by the victors of Battle Ridge. Then 2 days of siege, then the long hours of surrounding sharpshooters picking them off, one by one. And the charges to drive back encroaching warriors. The agonies of the wounded, and the heroism of Dr. Henry Porter who tended them under fire. Shallow graves for those who died. The brave men who risked death to bring kettles and canteens of water from the river. All this they told and much more, including Benteen's tough leadership when the chips were down. Finally, they had seen the women of the village breaking camp, and the long caravan trailing off to the southwest toward the Bighorn Mountains. as burial parties put Custer's command to shallow rest, a terrible job in this scene of hot decay. The officers tried to reconstruct his battle. Where some saw heroic stands, others traced disintegration and rout. Thus, entwined with personal loyalties and dislikes, began the Custer controversy. She walks with her shawl, hung Papa Lakota, said it as well as anyone. It was not a massacre, but a hotly contested battle between two armed forces. In the upshot, the Allied warriors won this battle, but assured their ultimate defeat. With support from a shocked nation, the Army pursued the fighting tribes until all were on reservations, refugees in Canada, or dead. Gone forever was the free life that Sitting Bull remembered. I have seen nothing that a white man has that is as good as the right to move in the open country and live in our own fashion. Today, we commemorate all who fought here. Prisoners of their own times, they fought as they had been taught to fight, to protect their own people and beliefs. All were patriots in their separate worlds of belief and ways of life. Joseph M. Marshall III, a descendant of the warriors who fought here, calls on us to realize that history belongs to all of us, because all of our ancestors lived it then, and we live with it now, with all of its victories and defeats, with all of its compassion and brutality. To do anything less would be to deny the humanity of it.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.